All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Yo-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. How are we feeling this afternoon?
Hazy, I was thinking about you today, and it was an extreme hypothetical, and I want you to give me your feedback. John Rahm announced his menu. It had a Spanish vibe to it.
Yeah, very Spanish flair to it.
Very Spanish. If I qualified as an AM and I won the U.S. Open, now listen.
I know what it is.
And I had the champions dinner, and I called you and said, can you come down here and make 30 of your lasagnas for the boys for the champions dinner? Would you do it?
Absolutely.
That is how highly regarded your lasagna is.
Wow.
Over any restaurant, any Italian family, your munja cake lasagna is tops
I appreciate
for me.
that, man.
I thought you were going
appreciate
somewhere
that.
else.
I thought he was going somewhere else, too.
Penny pesto. That's what I was thinking.
Maybe that could be like an appetizer. Maybe that could be an appetizer. We'd have Tyler down there as a bouncer at the front, and he
100%.
could manage.
100%.
Yeah.
Tyler running the operation from the alumni box.
Tyler and Cassie running the operation.
100%. 100%.
But I would call you and say, Hazy, do you mind coming down to Augusta National, and you can stay in the Butler cabin, and I want you to make me 30 of your lasagnas for Tiger Woods, Freddie Couples, DJ, and company.
Happily.
Little Ian Woosnam would love it, dude.
Oh, Woozy. He would stick his face in there and blow.
Dude,
Woozy
he would have 30 Ryan Cokes and nosedive right into your lasagna.
Him and Stadler right in there, the boys. Yeah. Can you imagine the walrus and
The
Woozy?
waiter would just drop a tray for Stads and say, enjoy.
I love that those two won the Masters, so they get to just roll in there every single year. And little Woozy, who's about 4'10", and he would just smash the lasagna. I would happily do that. I hope Gino Retta's listening or watching right now because his head is going to spin off. Remember, he was so offended.
Joe
what
from
I
the
had
Bridge,
to say.
Andy Petrillo, Carlo, all of them.
They're going to be Sam Cicerello.
Sammy,
I'll take yours is better. We'll do a taste-off.
I agree.
Let's have a blind taste-off. Let's get some
family
traditional lasagna menus in TSN, and we know where we know all of them. The logo is underneath who made it, and we'll do a taste test, and you will come up on top every time. Every damn time.
I think you would. And you know what? All the Italians around the shop would be pissed off, too, because they would be
Noodles,
so mad.
They're pissed off even hearing this.
They can be pissed off all they want. The truth is the truth. You stick me on a street corner outside the Coliseum in Rome. I start handing out little pieces of my lasagna. I would put everyone out of business. The whole city would collapse. The whole culinary system would collapse.
The Coliseum? You had a taste testing station at the Coliseum?
If you set me up at the corner where the Coliseum hits, we've all been there. It's a beautiful place. Maybe the most
incredible place on earth. You pay your admission, and right beside it is Hazy B's lasagna.
Just a one bite. One bite. Everyone gets one bite. I'll bet you the whole culinary system would collapse throughout the country. They all look at me and say, look at this guy.
Would you use local, Canadian sauce?
No, he knows what sauce
it's got to be Canadian. It's got to be Canadian.
Ragu.
It's got to be no name.
I'd have to.
No name. No name for ragu. Exactly. Little extra spice. It's a beautiful thing. Cottage cheese. You got everything in there.
You do a great job. But
thank you.
The sauce in Italy is just different. And you know it. We've talked about this before. I have eaten at a gas station, would be the equivalent of a 7-Eleven, and had the greatest sandwiches in my life and the greatest lasagna and stuff in Italy. It just happened.
No, but Noodles,
just tastes different.
Don't pour water on this fire right now. Do you not admit what he brought to us in the studio?
The best.
Be honest, that was the best lasagna you've ever had. The best.
For me, yeah.
For me, it'd be top 5 for sure. And believe me, I've eaten a lot of lasagna in my lifetime and a lot of noodles. My point being is you would be right there. TSN, you'd blow everybody out of the water. I have to challenge you standing on a street corner in Rome. Because you know there's a Nona right around the corner who's made her own.
I don't care.
And it probably melts in your mouth as well.
And I'll do a tour. I'll go all over the place. All over. Anywhere in Italy. I will go from the south to the north, the east to the west. One bite of my lasagna, I will change their history over there in terms of the way people feel about it.
Just
so yes, to answer
name.
your hypothetical,
Change
I would
your
happily
name.
do that.
Your name is Briante over there.
Yeah, that's right.
Briante.
Oh,
I would have a vowel at the end of my name by the time I left. I'd be an honorary citizen. I have no doubts about that. I thought what you were going to ask me, because you're on this health kick, would you be a hero and make it all healthy food for the menu?
No.
Right? Because, like, Rom has put his own spin on it.
If you pulled that stunt
It's so
at the
greasy. If you
Woozy
were like,
would
sorry.
Stads would throw a glass against the wall and walk right out of the butler cabin.
He'd protest. He'd be out of there. Woozy wouldn't be far behind. I don't think anyone would. Like, if you went in there and you're like, sorry, guys, tonight we eat healthy and clean.
No.
You should lose.
Get kicked out.
You should be kicked out, and you should lose your green jacket, and your title should be revoked. I think.
Agreed.
I really do. I believe that the chairman of Augusta National should say, it's like Reggie Bush when he lost his Heisman. You're out. We took one look at that menu. It's heroic and goofy, and you're out, and you're never allowed back. You're Greg Norman now. You cannot even step foot on the grounds of Augusta National.
Well, you have to, like, is there some hero that's trying to have, like, vegan or something like that, like, or just, you just
we'd have to go through the.
You got to cater to the masses. You cater to the masses, and you go, we're having junk food, we're having whatever you want.
But
what
noodles,
are the
like, it's wherever you're from.
Where
like,
you're from. Yeah,
Trevor
exactly.
Immelman's from South Africa. He had, like, South African lamb shanks or whatever. It's
right.
like they want to represent where they're from. And if I won the Masters, I'm from Toronto, Ontario, and I'm getting the best lasagna the province has to offer, and you're my guy.
Yeah, well,
I'd
happily supply that. And I think the most heroic element to that, because you can't, I mean, there's all types of different cuisine, and as O points out, generally it's where you're from. You want to represent your home, and that's great. But you get to the dessert, that's where if you're like really healthy, and it's like, we're having non-fat, a smoothie or something. It's like, come on, dude, get out of here. The boys don't want that. They don't want to wrap up a great night like that. So, yeah, Rahm brought his menu to the table, and, it looks great. I'm sure that'll be an interesting night. Like, John Rahm left Augusta National, the king of the PGA Tour. He took down Brooks Koepka, and he won one for the good guys, and now he returns, and he's a member of Live Golf.
I think they're all over it. Like, you even hear guys on the senior tour talk about it, and they're like, these guys just need to figure it out and have the best players play somewhere, whether it be 10, 15 times a year. Everybody's just had enough with it. And they want to find a way to make it work so they're all at the same venue 10 to 15 times a year. That's where they're at.
Yeah.
About money, too, right?
Well, of course, and everyone accepts that now. And the people that are being penalized are the fans. They just want to see the best players play against each other, and that's exactly what's happened. And, over time, things settle down. Like today, I read the note Doogie wrote us that 4 years ago today, Tom Brady left New England, which is amazing. It's been 4 years, and obviously he won a Super Bowl. He went to the playoffs multiple times. He retired multiple times.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that show upstairs in my dining room. That was the first week of COVID. Like, that was the start. I'll never forget it. Brady leaving New England to go to the Bucs. It's the only thing happening in sports. Everything else shut down except for the NFL. They're like, we're still doing free agency. We're going to figure this out. Brady's leaving. This is a bombshell. And that was 4 years ago. And at the time, it was like, what's this going to mean for the Patriots? What's it going to mean for Brady in terms of a world situation? We were all having those conversations. We'll never do this again. We'll never do that again. I mean, things cool down over time. Things generally revert back to common sense. Same things happening in golf. Same things happening in the world. And I found that interesting, though, that was 4 years ago today. We actually have Tom Curran on in a couple of hours because that Dynasty documentary came out on Apple, and it's causing a stir because it's being basically labeled as a hit piece on Belichick. And it sounds like Robert Kraft was kind of the one involved in all this in terms of supplying access. And a lot of Belichick's former players, like great players like Gronk and like, Rodney Harrison and McCourty, they're coming out and they're like, wait a minute. There were some controversies, but we were also a great team that won a lot. And Belichick was unbelievable. Like, was he harsh at times? Of course he was, but he was a great coach. And you hear that all the time from athletes. Yeah, he wasn't my best friend. Yeah, there were times I hated him, but you know what he did for me? He made sure I showed up to work every day. He made sure I was prepared, and he helped me win. And that's
you don't have to love what your
good
coach
qualities.
is saying or doing, but it's just like Sean Couturier. He probably hates Torts' guts right now, but he had to respect the decision. You got to respect their decisions.
Well, there's a big stir about that. We talked about. I'm so perplexed by this. Torts. The only thing we've talked about this for years now. The only thing a coach can do, the only leverage he has, is ice time. Correct? Like that's all
Noodles,
he has.
I didn't like it. I thought it was too much. I just think that the captain of the team. You could have lit his ass up in the locker room and then started him against Auston Matthews. I think that would have been there's got to be a different way to approach than message sending at the end of March. If you're message sending at the end of March, you got serious problems. And I get it. You have to keep people accountable, but I just didn't like it. I didn't like it, and I'm accountable 101, where it's like you can't let guys go out there and play like garbage. And maybe that was the case, but I just think there's got to be a different way for motivating a guy who's your captain. And I know Torts does not care about a resume, but other way of motivating him. I don't know.
I get that. There's a respect factor. I get that. But I also think that, you know what, if the guy's not playing well, I've watched him literally. I've been watching a lot of Philly lately because I did their game the other day, and, Couturier hasn't played well. He literally has not played well. And they might have, Torts might have hit him up. He might have done all the things that you talked about. Ultimately, Couturier, we've said this all along. Not once has a player ever been sat for playing too well. Obviously, I would rather him say, I'm not playing well enough. I got to chew on this. It's it is what it is. And, for me, they ended up winning. So Torts was right in the end.
That's what's interesting is that it paid off. If they were awful last night, or the Leafs showed up to play in the first two periods, then it would really be a story, because Tortorella now can tip his cap and say, hey, it worked out for me, worked out for us. I liked our response. We played, we won. And those are 2 big points for Philly. They need them. They're in a fight for their lives right now. They're trying to get in, and they're holding on to that 3rd seed in the Metro. They've had it basically all year, and they needed those points. And I would assume Couturier goes back in. Tortorella's stance is always, I'm not talking about it. I'm going to get all antsy and pissy and all that. And that's how he is. That's how he was after the game. So be it. I mean, he's been a coach for 20 years. You know the way he operates. You know the way it's going to go. A lot like Belichick, what we just talked about. There's no point in prying. You're not going to get an answer. He's not going to devolve. He's not going to divulge any type of info. And I'm sure Couturier will get back in the lineup, but in Philly, it probably plays well because of the nature of that market, right? They love the hard-nosed, hey, if you're not doing it, you're not going to stick around type game. I've noticed a lot of Flyer fans that were, at least what I've seen online, which is not a perfect science by any means, pretty supportive. And the fact that they won last night, I guess, is going to go that much further. We'll see what happens the next time they play. But, the other coach, Sheldon Keefe, he wasn't happy with his group last night. I don't think he should have been. I mean, the way they fumbled the puck and defensively, and they were really flat. The first 2 periods, they were really, really flat.
Bad game. It was
just a bad game.
Lyubushkin out of the lineup and Mitch Marner out of the lineup. We've seen quality teams that just keep steamrolling with good people. Vegas is an example. They won a bunch of games. No Eichel, no Theodore. That's just an example. But it shouldn't look like that with Lyubushkin out and Marner out. It was just, I don't know what that was last. I found it a frustrating game to watch, where it's like, and I do understand there was a bunch of posts and they had some opportunities. And for by the way, Torts saying that they played a great game, that's nonsense. No, they
Philly's not a good team. They're not a great team. They're not. I didn't think they were great last night. They get caved in their own zone, and there was a bunch of that could have easily been 7-4 for the Leafs. Yeah.
To be honest with you. But just the way the Leafs were in their own zone with just the missed assignments and scrambling all over the place, it just kind of bothered me, the outing where it was like, guys, what is that? What is that right now?
Yeah, it wasn't a professional game. And I think they respond tonight. I think tonight will say a lot about a conversation we had yesterday, and I carried it over with Jonas after you went and did the panel, trying to pinpoint what they are, who they are, what they do well, etc. And really, they're a veteran team that doesn't generally ever cheat you on effort. They show up to play. They're pretty workmanlike. And that's kind of what should be represented for a team that you expect to make the playoffs every year. That's generally their DNA, and I would expect that they show up tonight. I think it's a big game for Joseph Woll. I think it's a massive game for him because I didn't think Samsonov was good last night. I thought he gave up at least 2 soft goals. The Rielly Brody stuff is a hot topic. Every Leaf fan's talking about it. There's no alternative take anymore. It's an issue, and I think the issue is Brody in particular. And we talked about John Tortorella, and him going at Sean Couturier. I'm curious how far off you can be from taking Brody out of the lineup, and just saying we got to find something else here, or at least
that's not going to happen now because there was
happen.
Earlier in the season where he should have been taken. Yeah,
he's been
he
terrible.
Should have been taken out of the lineup.
But wasn't there a stretch there, guys, though, where Brody was really good away from Rielly? Correct.
Yeah, really good is probably a stretch, but he was good, yes, and he was on his left side, no question, during the suspension, and they went 5-0. So, listen, maybe Rielly's a part of that, too, and the difference is what Rielly can do is do what he did with the Bertuzzi goal, right, where even if he's having a bad night, he can give you something that no one else on that defense corps can do, which he can spark some offense, he can drive play. Rielly is by no means immune here. Like that goal we just showed that they gave up to start the period the other night.
Sanheim.
Yeah, that is horrendous.
That's not National Hockey League play.
You got full control of the puck.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with back pressure from the forwards or support or what Samsonov. That is horrendous for 2 professional defensemen who have been in the league that long. To fumble the puck around and mess around like that, you cannot do that in the NHL. You can, and you jam up everyone else, and it's happened too often. And Keefe had the comment earlier in the year that's Pee-wee stuff. You learn that in Pee-wee, and that's kind of an example of that. You can't start a fire when the puck's on your stick and no one's around you.
Yeah,
you can't have that.
The fire got magnified, okay, and this isn't the blame game, but when Morgan Rielly gives an off pass to TJ Brody, TJ Brody can't put gasoline on a fire by throwing another garbage backhand play behind the net. If it's a bad pass to Brody and you're under the gun, rip it off the glass and get it out.
Right, exactly.
Don't compound the problem by saying, oh, you want to give me a pile of crap? I'll give you one back. And now we got a real mess on our hands. First problem, get it out and deal with it in the neutral zone. Don't try to compound it and make something fancy. It was like, you know what, you screwed me over. I'm going to give you some garbage back. That's where the problem lied. It was okay, D to D, bad pass. I got to get this grenade out of here and get it out of trouble. Instead, it was, I'll throw something back at you, a soft play behind the net, and then it was a real mess. But that's what should have happened in that league. Bad pass, you're under the gun a little bit, flip it out of the zone. That's it.
Yeah. Relieve pressure.
Problem over.
Exactly. And it's happened
funny.
far too often, man. It's something like the problem is you move them. Rielly's going to play with Lyubushkin. When Lyubushkin's healthy, he's going to play with Lyubushkin. And Brody's going to play. I understand it. Keefe's going to keep playing him, but it's been consistent pretty much all year. Have there been a 5-game stretch here, a 10-game stretch, and they need him. They need him to perform. He kills penalties. He plays against the best players a lot.
Dude, I get it, Hayes.
And
you
it's
need
asking.
Him, but
it might just
what's
be
out
asking
there
too
is
much
what's
now.
out there. If you're expecting it to change, it like I said about lessons and discipline in March. If you think anything's going to change drastically to what it is right now, it's not. You got to find a way to play good, and that's the end of the story. Yeah. But for anyone to think it's drastically going to change,
it's not. They have who they have. They're not trading for anybody else. You just need Brody to play better. You need Rielly to, just like you laid out. Oh, they can't throw each other grenades and compound the problem. No. I watched Boston play last night. Any problem? Just soft chipping in the neutral zone.
That's it.
They're a very compact team. And that again, I'm going to chalk it up. It was a flat night. They didn't have a great night. They still found a way to make it interesting near the end. Maybe another 5 minutes. Who knows what happens?
Great part about the league, Jamie, you get a chance tonight to rebound.
Exactly.
Right, but this is a bigger picture conversation. It's like talking about the penalty kill. It's not just about last night. I mean,
you're right. You're right.
And again, I'm not suggesting they can find other players. What I'm saying is it keeps coming back to Brody. Like, try something else. Try someone else. Take him out of the situation. Give him a breather. Give him a reset. He might need that too. Because, yes, he's going to play. He's going to be one of their 6 guys going. But it just has been a constant issue all year. And I just feel like Keefe will not get away from it.
He's not comfortable with the depth enough to sit his ass on the bench for a period or a game. And he's probably got a case there where it's like, okay, I'd like to sit this guy on the bench, but what the hell am I going to do after that? But
who am I missing on the back end? There's Rielly, Brody, Benoit, McCabe.
Labushkin's out.
Oh, Labushkin.
And Edmondson obviously is going to play.
Edmondson and Liljegren. So, Labushkin comes in. Benoit, I know people yell and scream about Benoit.
I don't yell and scream about him. I thought he was their best D-man last night.
No, I'm saying the other way. When people go in and how is Benoit sitting out in that? He's a third pairing guy for me. And you know what?
I liked him last night, Noodles. I hear you.
It's fine. But
third pairing guy, Noodles, but somebody would have to, for
he
that
battles
to,
and he
hits.
does.
For that to be the first guy that comes out, I think is wrong. I do.
I totally agree.
I agree, but what I'm saying is you're talking big picture. Go up against Florida, go up against Boston, see how that unfolds.
Okay, but let me ask you this: if you had to put a defense pair out, and you had to pick the second part of a pairing against the Florida Panthers, right now, would it be Brody or would it be Benoit?
I'd go with Brody and ask him to play better. He's a better player than Benoit every day of the week.
Undoubtedly was 2 years ago. Undoubtedly, yeah. I don't know if he is anymore. Well, I don't think you can argue. I don't know if you can, Noodles. It happens. Mark Giordano, is he? Of course he was 5 years ago. Well, of course he was. Is he now?
Brody's not 40. He's just not.
He's not. He's playing like he's close to it, Noodles. Like he has been. And maybe it reverts and turns. Maybe he gets to the playoffs. He has struggled all year.
He just has. My point is I just think that Brody needs to play better. He's not Benoit is topped out. I don't think Benoit's a top four. And you're playing him, you're going to ask him to do much more than he's capable of, and that's going to bite you in the ass.
I wasn't talking about a top four role. I'm just talking about a pairing. Right. If you're talking about one defense pairing that's going out on the ice at any particular time. Anyway, we don't need to argue about who's better, but how about all of them need to step up? Edmondson wasn't any good last night either. They were a mess back there.
Yeah. I hear you. I mean, but this is what has to be. This is being discussed by the coaching staff, and it's on the coaches to figure it out.
Sure.
You know, and that's in what I have concluded. I mean, Rielly's going to play, and again, Morgan's not immune from any of this.
Sure.
Morgan Rielly doesn't help himself a lot of times defensively. Can make mistakes with the puck. He can get pushed off pucks or get caught kind of chasing plays. There are elements of his game that can be difficult to play with. And Brody the first few years did, I thought, a really, really good job of working with him and working off him. This year it hasn't worked as well, but it's on Keefe to figure out, how am I going to put together 3 deep pairings that can play, and who am I going to rely on the most? And maybe he is telling us the answer. This is it. This is what I'm doing. This is what it's going to be, because I know what the other guys can do. And I got to hope this guy, who could do it a year ago, is going to revert to doing it now. And maybe that will be the best practice. And maybe that's the smart play, and maybe it works out.
Well, and you make a good point, Brian.
That's their approach at this point.
Right now is the time to give guys a jolt. If Brody needs a reset, give it to him now. That's the point. Is you aren't. Are you going to climb? You're not going to. You kind of are third in the Atlantic. You might have a chance at the second, but maybe not.
Yeah, you're third.
So point being is you can start to mix and match. You can start to do things. You've got a month still, but get the players that you want to play game one playing to their capabilities. So if you identify TJ Brody or player X and go, I need this guy to play better, figure out a plan. Because they did that with Samsonov. And I'm not saying waivers and all that, but I'm saying figure out a plan for individual players to get to what they're capable of for game one of the playoffs. That should be the focus.
I agree. I mean, listen, Tampa won last night. They're not clear cut. They're looking behind them as opposed to in front of them. Boston, you were there, Noodles. They just move aside. Ottawa. We'll get into that later.
Pasternak is
Pasternak is so good. He's so good, and Boston's a machine. And Florida, I wouldn't say they've slowed down, but all of a sudden, they've lost a couple games, and now it seems to flip every couple of days. Is it going to be
Boston at 97 again? It's just
They're gonna roll to 112, 114 points.
That Monty, I'm telling you, back-to-back coach.
He should be.
Hayes
Jim
seriously.
Montgomery, he is my vote.
Krejci Bergeron, goodbye, and 97 points in the middle of March.
They're going to win the President's Trophy again.
Yeah,
I think Monty
right
should
there.
go for 2, man. I think he's Scheffler at the Players.
Double down, Monty.
Well, I mean,
Double
I love talk.
down.
Yeah, you got to love talk. You got to love, Torts has dragged that team. There are some coaches that deserve the love. But Monty, you're right. Like, you take the 2 top centermen out of your roster. We all thought Boston was taking a step back this year. I did. Anyways, I did. I don't know if you
Noodles,
guys did.
I didn't know if they would make
sure.
the playoffs last year, and they set records, and then they're just doing this again this year. It's incredible, man.
Yeah, it really is.
Incredible.
It really is. And, listen, there's going to be things moving and moving targets, and we'll figure out who the Leafs are going to play and what position they're in. But it's very likely they're the 3rd seed. And, just because you lost last night and threw away a point on Saturday doesn't mean all of a sudden they're going to fall back into a wild card race. But we're going to catch up with Mark Masters. We'll get his take on the mood around the team last night, the game tonight where you got Leafs Caps, Matthews, Ovechkin. Ovechkin was speaking on Matthews earlier today. Some interesting stats that the NHL was actually pumping out on their own social media accounts today about, the 2 of them through a certain amount of games. We'll tell you about that. We'll get into it. Masters is coming up. Eddie O's coming up. Role play level of concern a little bit later this afternoon as well. There's a lot of roles to play and possibly a lot of concern to go around.
What
So
about
more
come
still to come.
Masters weekend, a lasagna comes in as a tribute?
I can see that. Yeah, I think so. It's long overdue, man.
Like the Thursday or Friday, if we're in studio on a Masters type week, it's just to celebrate. And Joe from the Bridge, you said you wanted to bring some of your nonos in. No disrespect, but we don't want to ruin the lasagna experience. We like the Hazy B lasagna.
Right. I have exclusivity over lasagna.
Yeah,
I know
and don't ever tell anyone the recipe.
Never.
And ever.
Never, ever, ever.
How about this? From Sam Cicerello. So, Italian producer, all of our friend of the show.
Tell him to be careful with this comment, but go ahead.
I'm on Team Hayes on this. I'd support him in Rome.
Thank you, Sam.
Wow.
I can't tell you how much that means to me.
Sammy the Bull.
That's
that is, I mean, I was checking the name going, are you sure who this is? I thought it was a joke.
Oh, I'm going everywhere.
Wasn't.
Milan, Torino,
Briante.
Venice.
Briante.
I'm going everywhere, man. It's going to be the Eras Tour, the Lasagna Tour through Italy. I'm going to be selling out
and
stadiums.
Dude, if it goes over well, you see these creepy old pizza machines that throw out a piece of pizza. They're like it's like a pop machine.
Yeah.
And it's a pizza. You could have a Hazy B little one-timer lasagna. They would be everywhere.
The wheels are in motion. The wheels are in motion. The Lasagna Tour is coming, and it is going to change lives. I can't wait for it. All right, Masters coming up. Leafs Caps tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Justin tweeting in saying Hayes went from pissing off cities to a whole country. Hashtag the Lasagna Tour. Yeah, I like it.
What was the comment before the hashtag?
That I went from pissing off cities to a whole country. Hashtag the Lasagna Tour. So
Briante. Briante lasagna.
Yeah.
I love it. And
Brio
it's got legs.
Hazini. I'm coming to a town near you.
Briani Hazini coming to a venue near you.
Yeah, I can't wait. All right, so Leafs Caps tonight. I saw the NHL tweet this out earlier that goal scoring pace through their first 547 games. Auston Matthews has scored 354 goals. Ovechkin had scored 337 goals. So through, again, 547 games, which is not inconsequential. Like, this isn't, he's in his second year. He's about to play his 89th game. Like, Matthews has played almost 8 years in the league. 547 games. Matthews has averaged .65 goals per game. Obie at the same time, .62 goals per game, which is a pretty astonishing stat for both guys, clearly. Let's head down to Washington now. Here's our TSN Maple Leaf reporter, Mark Masters. Mark, I believe you were in the scrum. You heard from Obie today. I guess Ovechkin was, talking up the idea that Matthews chasing him down could be a reality, could be a good thing for the sport. What do you make of that storyline going into tonight?
I love it. I think it's great. First of all, it was nice that Ovechkin was in such a good mood today because I remember being here early in the season and he hadn't scored yet, and it was a very short scrum, which he kind of called game on and left after 5 questions and was like, I'm done. So he was in great spirits today, and he's actually hotter than Matthews right now from a goal scoring perspective. He's kind of feeling it at the moment, but I love it. I mean, this is the story. Isn't it? Anytime these guys get together, 2 of the greatest goal scorers ever. Clearly, the baton's been passed to Matthews in terms of this current era, but it's just cool to see him go head-to-head, although Ovechkin pointed out to me that he will not be playing against Matthews tonight. Said, how do you shut this guy down? He's like, I will not be doing that. So he was very honest about that. He's certainly not going to be leaned on in defensive situations tonight by the Capitals. But, this is the storyline anytime it feels like the Leafs and the Capitals get together, as it should be.
Absolutely, as it should be. And as you mentioned, though, Ovi's kind of red hot right now. He's coming off a 2-goal game in Calgary a couple of nights ago, and Austin's cooled down. And I've noticed Leaf fans are attaching Marner's injury to that, and I think there's certainly something to it. But I'd warn people from turning on this guy from getting hot. I mean, he can get hot at any point, and the idea that he's not going to score goals anymore to me is lunacy the rest of the year. But what do you make of Austin's play recently? And you mentioned Ovi's attitude or mood earlier in the season. Have you noticed a mood shift when it comes to Matthews over the last couple of days?
Yeah, we haven't spoken to Matthews a lot. We tend to a lot of the time we just speak to him after he scored because he scores, it seems like, every game. I wanted to speak to him, before we went on the road here, Monday. I'm not sure what happened, but he wasn't available Monday at practice. Didn't get to speak to him last. So I guess the last time we would have heard from him was Thursday night in Philadelphia last week when he scored. So it's been a bit. But yeah, I think, it's funny. Of course he's going to get hot again at some point here. The guy's had back-to-back hat-tricks twice this season. Ovechkin was funny. He was making us do math today. He's like, what's he at now? How many games are left? He's like, yeah, but he could score 4 in the next game. And then he's right there. And we're like, yeah. Interesting comment from a guy who's playing him that night. But, he could get hot at any point. I did think it was interesting. I was talking to Ovechkin. I was like, what do you remember most about your 65-goal campaign? And he said it was that they were basically battling right to the end to just get in. It was playoff hockey the last month and a half. He scored 11 goals in the last 12 games that season. They won 11 of 12. They finished the season on a 7-game win streak, and they made it on the last day. So the Leafs aren't going to have that to fuel Matthews. In fact, wouldn't be surprised if he sat a game or 2 just based on what's happened in recent years. So it'll be intriguing to see exactly how many he ends with. But, yeah, he's going to get hot again here. It's they're trying to figure out the lines right now. Clearly, Holmberg wasn't working on the top line. I thought Domi, there was some chemistry there last night. I'd be interested to see them start the game, a full game with Domi there with Bertuzzi and Matthews. I think that could look interesting, but clearly the Marner injury has kind of slowed down a bit of the pace here.
Mark, where do you think the group's kind of mindset is at? And I don't want to I think we talked about this earlier in the year. It's like being bored of knowing where you're going to finish because Boston could easily be bored last year and this year. Just where do you think kind of mindset is at? They just want to get to the playoffs or they want to get their game together? What do you see on a day-to-day basis as of right now? And I know it's recency bias. They're probably not too happy about last night.
Yeah, I think that's probably part of the reason why Sheldon Keefe was so upset, right? Is that was just, they weren't sharp. They just weren't into it. And Philadelphia, whom they're clearly better than, they showed that just a few days earlier in Philadelphia. You don't want that to seep in here. Now that this is the first time in a couple months they've lost back-to-back games in any fashion, so you don't want this to start kind of seeping this malaise, right? We've seen this in the past with this team. That's not how you want to be going into the playoffs. So they're saying the right things, but that's why I think you see Sheldon Keefe get so upset last night. It's an unsettling performance, so we'll see. You try and manufacture the intensity. The problem is, Washington is battling for their lives here. They watched Philadelphia win last night. Now they're outside of playoff spot. Detroit scores late, wins in overtime. Patrick Kane. So, yeah, it's tricky, but maybe that will bring out another level of the Leafs tonight. But yeah, they're saying the right things, but that was not what they're looking for last night.
Any rumblings around the goaltenders? Obviously, Joseph Woll gets the start. Samsonov, I thought was, I don't know, like everybody else last night. I didn't love his game, but I didn't love what was going on in front of him. So any rumblings around the goaltending, even moving forward, depending on who plays well tonight. If Woll plays well, do you go with him against Edmonton this weekend type of thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure they're going to overthink it too much. But I do like what they like. I think probably you just go back to Samsonov Saturday and have Woll go Sunday against the Hurricanes. Like, you just kind of rotate this week with the back-to-back. We'll see. Maybe Woll stands on his head and you reward him with the big showpiece kind of Oilers showdown on Saturday night. But I like what they did in terms of, like, Woll doesn't dress last night. If you're going to carry 3 goalies, like, let's take advantage of that, right? Like, Woll was like the last guy on the ice at the morning skate. I looked up and I was like, he's really putting in the work. So have a great work day, get set for this start, and maximize that. They got another situation this weekend where whoever is starting Sunday shouldn't dress at all Saturday. So I like that. But yeah, it's going to heat up. That's a true storyline down the stretch here. Is like, really feels like whoever is the hottest at the end of this regular season is going to be the game 1 starter. And then who knows after game 1 where it goes. But that's the storyline to watch. Samsonov starting to come back down to earth a little bit, kind of understandably, probably. And now we'll see Woll. It's been a while. March 7th in Boston, the day that Marner got hurt. So I'm intrigued. He said he was pressing too much when he came back right away. And he's got to learn to just kind of let the game come to him. So we'll see if the time off has helped him.
Yeah, it feels like a really big opportunity for him tonight because, he, as you mentioned, he's been pressing a bit. He hasn't played great. He had 2 big opportunities, 2 massive games against Boston. His teammates didn't help him out there, but he wasn't great himself. And this feels like the team's going to respond tonight. I think they'll have a good effort. If he plays well, this could have a lasting memory on what happens in the future. And to your point, they have a back-to-back this weekend, so they're both going to go. 2 tough teams. Edmonton's rocking. Carolina's rocking. So this is a big weekend, a tough weekend. But at some point, like, I'm curious how you feel this is going to be concluded, Mark. Like, do you think we could get to game 1 of the playoffs and it's Sheldon basically saying you'll find out when the game starts, or do you think we'll have some sort of an announcement on who the actual number 1 guy is?
I'm dreading that scenario where we're going into the playoffs and every morning skate we're going to be reading body language cues. Like, I think I've got a pretty good sense of what their morning skate routines are when they're starting and what exactly they do, but I don't want 2 guys going off at the same time and Sheldon saying show up at warm-up, and I prefer not to go down that road, and then the goalies don't want to give it away, and you're asking them questions, hypothetical. Anyway, let's hope it doesn't come to that, but it absolutely could. Even the other day, like, Samsonov was going to for sure, like, it's just the way he went about his practice on Monday, you could tell, and I talked to him on the Friday before the Carolina game, like, and he made it very clear he was going to play that game, and then I asked Sheldon just to confirm, he's like, you'll find out. So they like to be a little tight-lipped with the goaltending already to begin with. They don't want to give any sort of advantage, but yeah, 100% I could see it coming down to them not naming anyone in those, because it feels like there's going to be a long break. I believe the playoffs don't start till the Monday and the end on a Wednesday, and it's hopefully it's just clear, but I can certainly see a scenario where it's not clear, and that's probably the worst-case scenario for the Leafs, is where you're guessing and the guys are guessing and you kind of go in unsettled.
With Mark Masters, Leafs Caps tonight, pretty cool TV moment last night. You were doing your pregame hit, and Reaves and Deslauriers were at the red line right behind you, and I'm sure you couldn't hear them considering you were preoccupied, but was that like a premeditated thing? I mean, they obviously fought later in the game. It seemed cordial. It seemed like they were just kind of talking it up. Hey, how's everything going? Yet those are 2 heavyweights going at it last night. It kind of had a Deslauriers-Rempe vibe, which we saw earlier in the years. Was that your read on the situation, that they were mapping out their plans to fight later in the game?
Crazy how like business-like it was, too. Yeah. It's like, hey, do you think maybe in the first you'd be interested? And it was like, yes, possibly. And then they kill each other.
I think MJ said, basically, Deslauriers said, I'm game whenever you are, and left it up to Reaves, is what I gathered from talking to MJ. It was funny. It usually doesn't happen that I'll be standing with the camera facing the Philadelphia end and that kind of center ice. We usually face the Leafs end, but it just so happened that the story was Torts benching Couturier, so we turned it around yesterday, and we caught that great moment, and I had no idea. And then James Duthie is taking a throw back from me, being like, that was interesting behind Masters. I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? And then I find myself in the highlight pack with a spot shadow in the background. never looked so good. But yeah, my sense there was that it was basically like, I'm just letting you know, look at these heavyweights. It was great. I love Reaves talking about the conversation he had with Rempe in the box after their much anticipated fight in Toronto, and how Rempe was being like, I can't believe how much anticipation there was for this, and it's such a big Saturday night, original six teams, and everyone wanted to see this fight. And Reaves was like, yeah, it's cool, and like that's what they're talking about. I think there's obviously a brotherhood there amongst the guys who are going to do that sort of thing. So that was kind of cool, and hopefully Reaves is okay, because that fight happens, he doesn't come back. He's one of two right shot forwards they got cooking right now. So Willie Nylander might be the only right shot forward they have in the lineup. They're struggling here without Marner and Yarncroke. So we'll see what probably Gregor would get pressed into duty. Maybe he was going to play anyway with the back-to-back, but hopefully Reaves is okay. I wonder if he got scratched up when Deslauriers was trying to grab him. Sometimes that happens because it felt like most of the fists were hitting the helmet in that scrap, but hopefully he's okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the update. All right, Mark, enjoy it tonight, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
Mark Masters, yeah. They were both thrown, but I didn't see really any hit. It did look like Reaves maybe got poked in the eye, or, you take a fingernail to the eye or something. That's not good. But, yeah, it was interesting. Like, there's a lot of heavyweights going at it right now in the league. Like, a lot down the stretch. All of a sudden, Reaves, we were having that conversation a few weeks ago that he hadn't fought since the second game of the year, and now he's had a bunch of them. So, yeah, you got Leafs Caps tonight, and, we'll get into the Matthews conversation. We'll chat about it with Eddie O in about 20. But Marner being out clearly is going to factor in. Every great goal scorer, Ovechkin included, right? He had Backstrom for a long time, Kuznetsov on the power play, Karlsson on the power play. Like, you need great players to set you up, and Marner's one of the best playmakers in the world. So clearly he puts it on a tee for him. But the idea that, I've noticed the goalpost moving, like, can't even get to 60. Like, really?
No,
are you kidding me? You think this guy's just going to score? Yeah, exactly.
15
like,
games.
What have we not learned that this guy is a freak of nature when it comes to scoring goals? And I didn't like his game last night. I thought he blended in. He wasn't great. But even with that, he hit the post. He had opportunities. Tonight, I'll bet you he comes out flying. I would not be surprised at all if he scored one or two tonight. And once he scores again, look out. I fully expect him to get rocking again. And, 70 out of touch, possibly, especially without Marner. But I still think he can get to 65, 66, like, for sure, with 15 games left to go or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think you got to get him feeling good for the playoffs. Like, that's, whatever number he ends up on, it's not going to change the fact that they need him when it's most critical. Like, it's
Did you expect
stat.
anything else,
Right.
you guys, about people complaining and just drawing up something? That's where we're
Right.
at.
No, I get it. But if we're talking regular season, yes, you want to see him, get to a number, 66, 60, whatever number you want him to hit. If he can get to 70, it's 15 goals in 15 games. We've seen him do that. So he's certainly capable of doing that. The bigger picture is you want him comfortable against game one against Florida or Boston.
Noodles, I was just going to say that. He can do whatever he wants, and it's obviously a nice feather in the cap to rip home 70 or get past his prior career high. I want this guy to have a playoff series against somebody, and just I just go back to, and I know he's not Eric Lindros, but just be a big, giant, physical, dominant player. And that doesn't always equate to goals, but just to be the most dominant player on the ice physically, like, just own the puck, own the offensive zone, create opportunities, get shots on net. I'm dying to see that for him come playoff time, because I know he can do it.
Yeah,
one of the best players in the world.
Absolutely. He has to. He's got to do it. All right, Eddie O coming up. Role play level of concern coming up as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Eddie Olchuk coming up. There's a lot of action in the NHL last night. We'll get into that with Eddie. And baseball started this morning. I don't know how many people were paying attention to that. But
Dude, I thought they were over there having some, exhibition series, and it's like, Ohtani looks great, and league started. And I'm like, oh, wow.
I totally missed, man. I was talking with Jonas yesterday. I thought it was next Wednesday.
Me too.
And I got home last night, and I'm reading online. They're like, hey, Ohtani debuts in Seoul, and these are real games. And they play again tomorrow. Then they come home, and they play spring training games, and then they restart again on opening day. I understand what they're trying to do, international games, and they've had this planned out for years. It didn't just happen when they signed Ohtani, but the whole nature of it is strange. Like,
Dude,
they have two real games.
It's insane. The amount of travel in these pro sports, like in the NHL, and I get it's about money and it's about growth and all that, but if somebody told me, hey, you want to start like the LA Kings, go to Australia, what? No way. Do you know what it's like playing on the West Coast of the National Hockey League? And you want me to go to Australia to play 2 games and some practices? No way. Even the Sweden stuff in the middle of the season, it's like, great for Nylander, great being over there, but who really wants it? The idea is great, and it turns out all the fans were there, but that's a wear and tear, man. It's like not needed.
Yeah, I forgot about the Australia. Who went? L.A. and who?
Arizona, I think it was.
Australia.
And I heard the ice was just like
it was kangaroos running around the ice.
Yeah, it didn't work out well. Listen, I get it. I understand the business plan, but for North American fans, and we're spoiled, but these are our teams, right?
Yeah.
Like they are. These are our leagues over here. You don't see Manchester United starting their season at BMO Field. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen.
Wouldn't that be insane?
Yeah, it's like Shohei Ohtani made his debut today, and it was like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And anyway, he had a couple of hits. That lineup's gross. Like Mookie Betts into Shohei Ohtani into Freddie Freeman as a 1-2-3 is just disgusting. And I can just picture a starter getting up there, bad shoulder, a little bit hungover, and like that's what you're going to face immediately is Mookie Betts into Shohei Ohtani into Freddie Freeman. Anyway, more on that later this afternoon. The Raptors back in action. The Leafs back in action tonight. Hour 2 coming up. Eddie Olczyk, role play level of concern at 5:30. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.